morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to have a little bit of a look at a whole bunch of cards from Temporal Forces. The pre-releases are almost here. The pre-releases are basically upon us. They are starting this weekend, so it's time to have a look at, well, we've got secret rares, we've got a new ace spec, we've got a lot of very cool stuff. So let's start off with a new ace spec. Let's have a look at Maximum Belt. I love Maximum Belt. It's a very cool card. It's a tool card, and it, when you attach it to a Pokemon, means you do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. That's it. That's what it does. And here's the thing. Over in Japan, this is seeing play. Now, obviously, it is an ace spec, and that means that you do have to make that decision. You can only have one ace spec total in your deck. If you play this, you can only play one copy of it, and you cannot play any other ace spec in your deck. That's very important, but it's pretty good. And honestly here, this card, it's very simply a numbers thing. If it's going to help you hit the numbers, it's going to be good. And I mean, Giratina is one that plays this quite a bit, and the reason why Giratina plays it quite a bit is incredibly simple. Hits the numbers. Giratina generally hits for 280. That is basically the highest we see from Giratina attacking. Well, against something like a Charizard, they've got 330. So all of a sudden, 280 isn't enough. You whack Maximum Belts on that, all of a sudden that 280 goes up to 330, and oh, would you look at that? You just so happen to be doing the perfect amount of damage to get a one-hit KO on a Charizard. And it's basically that. I'm not saying it's just for Giratina into Charizard, I'm saying that's probably the biggest example right now, but anytime you desperately need a big influx of damage to shore up what would otherwise be a very tricky matchup, this is it. This is what you go for, and for that, it's absolutely brilliant. But how about some secret rares? How about Incineroar? I love Incineroar. I really desperately want this Incineroar EX to be good. Is it going to be good? Probably not, honestly, but oh, I want it to be so badly. The ability says that attacks used by this Pokemon cost one colorless energy less for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So in theory, if they've got 4 bench Pokemon, you can attack for a single colorless energy, and then you do 240 plus burn. And remember, I keep trying to call them the new burn rules. They're clearly not the new burn rules. They are the newest burn rules, put it that way. But what we got from the newest burn rules are that your opponent takes 20 damage and then flips to see if they're still burned. Heads, they're not still burned. Tails, they are, and they take 20 damage during next Pokemon checkup, etc. So look, 260 for a single energy is clearly good, but there's 2 gigantic problems with this card. Gigantic problem number 1, it's a stage 2. I know we say that a lot, but I'm sorry, that's still a massive downside. Gigantic problem number 2, your opponent can play around this. If you're really relying on this being a single energy attack, your opponent benches 3 Pokemon, you've got to find that second energy. But then again, Magma Basin's a thing. So with Magma Basin, the only way for your opponent to make this attack super awkward is to only bench 2 Pokemon? Well, a lot of the time they're going to want to bench more than 2 Pokemon. I don't know. If you can get this dude rolling, ladies and gentlemen, maybe. And look, I know that Sun and Moon Incineroar is a card that I played way too much of, and that had single energy, decent damage vibes to it, and I love that card. And I desperately tried to make that card work, and it never did. Maybe this is just new Incineroar. But you know what? I want this to be good, ladies and gentlemen. I desperately want this to be good. Speaking of fancy Pokemon EXs, how about Farigiraf? Lovely full art Farigiraf EX. This is another one with an awful lot of potential that may well not quite end up being good enough, and that makes me a little bit sad. The ability here, Armor Tail, is brilliant. It prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon EX. And what is really important here, we are seeing the rotation. This comes out, this is legal, on the first day of the UIC, which is also the day rotation happens, which is a day we say goodbye to Path to the Peak. So there is an argument here that you get rid of Path to the Peak, and then all of a sudden your opponent can't use a stadium to turn this off easily, and against basic EXs, this is hilarious. We're not in a big basic EX format. And I'm not saying there's no big basic EXs around. Iron Hand is looking to be a top deck when the rotation hits, and this will absolutely be great against Iron Hands, although the HP is high enough here to make it really awkward for Iron Hands. And my point is, it's not good enough. Charizard is a top deck in the metagame. This won't stop it. Giratina's obviously a V-Star, not an EX. Won't stop that. Lugia won Japan's Champions League, the only one within this format. Well, that's a V-Star. There's so many, single prizes aren't EXs. V-Stars. Stage 1 EXs. Stage 2 EXs. There are too many Pokemon that go around it. This could be a fun little tech against some decks, but it's not going to be a deck on its own unless we end up in a format with lots of basic EXs. But if we do, keep this dude in mind, it will be awesome. The attack is free energy, 160 plus 30, 20 your opponent's bench. The attack's kind of irrelevant here. This is one of those Pokemon where either you're blocking, and it's amazing, or you're not, and it's irrelevant. But there are some supporter cards we can have a look at, including one of the absolute best cards in the set artwork-wise. We've got Morty's Conviction. Special illustration rare Morty's Conviction. And honestly, one of the coolest things about this card is going to be the fact that it's got a Gengar on it. Now, it does also have Pidgey on it, but I think the Gengar is probably more relevant. And the reason that that's relevant, a lot of people collect Gengar cards. Gengar's a very popular Pokemon, and therefore, people are going to be after this card. In terms of its playability, it's kind of cool. You have to discard a card from your hand to use it, but then you draw a card for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And it's another one of those where your opponent can play around it, but they have to hurt themselves in order to play around it. So your opponent can just be like, ha ha ha, I'm not playing a bunch of bench Pokemon because I know you're relying on Morty, and fine. But then, of course, they're not playing the bench Pokemon. And I've said many times, if your opponent is deliberately not playing a card that they want to play just to try and hurt you, well, that's kind of a win for you at that point. Because honestly, your opponent is probably going to want to play that card, and they're not. And then, they've got a suboptimal board state, I think is probably the best way to phrase it. But that's not all. We've also got ourselves a lovely full art Salvatore. Now, there is going to be a special illustration rare of that. We can't see it yet, I'm sorry. But Salvatore, firstly, a Alolan Raichu pin. That's amazing. Only just noticed that. And it's a decent card. It's lovely artwork. You search a deck for a card with no abilities and evolves from one of your Pokemon and put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it. You can use this ability on a Pokemon you put down when you were setting up to play, or on a Pokemon that was put into play this turn. Yes, pretty nice. So no abilities is a real pain, but other than that, this is potentially a very, very strong card. And being able to cheat evolution a little bit, not too bad. Get yourself a draw engine so that you're not relying on your supporters for draw, and this could be cool. And the last supporter card we need to have a little bit of a look at here is, well, we've been wanting to know what it's called for a while now. And now we finally do actually know what it's going to be called. And that's rather lovely. It's Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking. Yeah. Cool card. Lovely artwork. One interesting thing is that this might be one of the longest names we've ever seen on a Pokemon card. Another interesting thing is that this was actually revealed in a tweet by Pokemon TCG UK, and the lovely Cerebi Joe has worked out what the binary says. I'm too lazy, but Joe figured it out. And what it actually says is, you lose the game. Or you just lost the game, to be more precise. How cool is that? Also, I've lost. That is, yeah, that's kind of cool. In terms of the card, it's mallow. It's literally mallow. You search your deck for 2 cards, shuffle your deck, put those 2 cards on top of your deck. It is very literally mallow. Here's the thing, though. if you've got a decent draw engine, say something like Curlier, for instance, where you can just discard a card from your hand and draw 2 cards every turn, or Bibarel, that draws 2, got 5 cards in hand to just make sure you go down to 3 cards or fewer in hand, well, now all of a sudden, you're drawing those cards like guaranteed. So, using your existing draw engine you're already playing around with, and this just makes sure that you're guaranteed to draw the 2 cards that you most want. If you don't have that draw engine, it is very much not as good a card, because you need to, draw into them and all of that. But if you're in a situation where you actually are able to go and search out these cards, and then know that you're going to draw into them, this becomes a phenomenal card. And it's exactly like Mallow in terms of what it does, and it's exactly like Mallow in terms of when you should play it. If you've got that draw engine, this card is phenomenal. So let's finish off with a couple of ordinary illustration rares, like Lickitung, stealing some desserts. I can't decide if I like this artwork or it weirds me out too much. Makes me not want to eat desserts, put it that way. But it's Lickitung, and it's cool. Tongue Pull is actually not a terrible attack. Your opponent reveals their hand, put up to 2 basic Pokemon you find there onto their bench. This can be annoying. It can fill up their bench and give them not room for other cards. You can actually use this with Incineroar, which is kind of fun, or Morty's Confidence to, gain a bigger advantage from your opponent's larger bench. Maybe you can find them with a Luminion in hand, so that they have to have the Luminion on the board, but they don't get to use the ability to search out a supporter card, which is very much the worst of both worlds. Fun little tech that could annoy your opponent. And then finally, we've got Metagross. I like Metagross. It's got a lovely piece of artwork by Katsunori Sato. It's just got some Metagross clearing some snow. It's rather lovely. In terms of the card, it's very meh. It's actually significantly worse than the Metang, which I showed you the other day is going to be a pre-release promo. The Metang is really the star of this evolution line, going and getting all that metal energy into play. So Metang gets a pre-release promo, Metagross gets an illustration rare, and everyone goes home happy. And there we go. If you go to a pre-release this weekend, good luck to you. I am very hyped for Temporal Forces, and now it's over to you guys. Tell me which of these cards you're excited for. Tell me which of these you're going to be playing. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely AB3, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person, so shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.